Oh, okay. All right. Good evening, everybody. Happy Wednesday. We almost there, y'all. We almost made it. We so close. I know. Clap it up. Shoot. Shoot, we almost made it. So, real quick, we're gonna get it started. We have a really busy man. This meetup is gonna be popping tonight. I'm really excited, genuinely. But before we get into that, real quick, level set. For those that don't know who I am, I'm Kelly McGowan. I'm the founder and executive director of Transform 314, and we're an organization that's working to bridge the disconnect between Black St. Louisans and local governments so we can drive the policies needed to create thriving communities. Our lane is focusing on improving our built environments. Have people heard of that term before in this room? Yeah, raise your hand. Are you, if you're familiar with the term? Oh yeah, I know you are. Yeah, I know you are too. But for folks that may not be familiar with that term, the way I describe it is if we walk outside of this awesome venue, it's whatever you see around you. So it's the streets, the sidewalks, if there's lighting or not, the type of businesses that you see, the buildings, if they're occupied or not, when we're talking about public transportation, and I can go on and on and on. So those are things that are part of the built environment, and decisions made at the local level through policy really do impact that. And so that's what we do. We really try to make sure people understand how that works, and most importantly, how people can engage to influence those processes, because this is our community, right? So that's what we're here for. All right. So I welcomed y'all, gave introductions. We'll do really quick introductions in here because I just like people to know who's in the room. We'll also get into a quick review of the purpose of our meetups and house rules so we're all on the same page. We have not one, not two, but three special guests in the building that's going to talk about the regional Safe Streets for All Safety Action Plan. Shout out to Christie on that. We will also have a word from the streets, literally, from Director Betherny Williams, who's representing the Streets Department for the City of St. Louis. And we'll also have an update on what's happening with the ARPA funds fixing our streets. So shout out to Scott Oglivie there. Shout out to him, City of St. Louis. Whoop, whoop. And then after that, I have a couple updates I wanted to share based off of some things I know we've talked about a lot in previous meetups, so people know what's going on with those. And then I always have stuff for y'all to do after that as a wrap up, and we may have a couple special announcements. All right, so as I said, just really brief announcements or introductions, just so folks know who's all in the space. I just want folks to just provide these things, share your name, and also what ward and or neighborhood you live in. So I will model this. So I'm Kelly McGowan. I live in the 9th Ward in the Central West End neighborhood. And I'm going to pass it to Ryan right here. Thank you. Craig.
Craig Smith. I live in Marie Villa neighborhood, Ward 8, Block 1902.
Oh, okay. Go ahead. All right.
My name is James White. I actually live in the county, but I work for Vector Communications, and a lot of our public engagement projects are in the city of St. Louis. So.
Oh, welcome.
Hi, my name is Daphne. I recently found out that what I thought I lived in is not it. But I'm in Ward 10 in the Academy Sherman Park neighborhood.
All right, stand up. Cool.
I'm Lexi Major. Yeah, I'm Ward.
I'm Janessa Bailey. I live in Ward 9, Central West End.
I'm King King. I live in the county, but I work in the city, so we're trying to get the
Thank you. We'll head over here.
I'm Salman Karainen. I live in Ward 9, Central West End.
Cool. Cool. We're going to start over here.
My name is James Cleveland. I live in Ward 11. I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy Kelly that she's put together a
Thank you. Gang, gang. Cool.
Betherny Williams, Central West End. J.M. Jacob Brown, Benton Park, Ward 8. My name is John Walker. I live in Ward 7, Roadways. I'm Christie Holland. I live in Ward 7.
Charles Bryson, Council Council Trailhead, and I live in the village.
All right. So we have folks representing all areas of the city, and also we got our county fam too in the building, not to count y'all out. And so that just goes to show, I like to do that to show that we all do care about improving our city and our region. And also, if you heard someone else that shares your ward, your neighborhood, this is also an opportunity for you to connect with them if you haven't yet. So, all right, real quick. What's the purpose of our meetups for folks, for our new folks? So this is it. So we use this as an opportunity to connect and build with fellow St. Louisans looking to improve our city. We also use this as a space to share information and legislative updates about things that impact our streets and other aspects of our community's built environments. We also use our meetups as a space for everybody. Okay, that's 4 R's in there. Okay, everybody. So to come together in a productive and solutions-oriented way, because we know we got a whole lot of problems. It's gonna take us all to solve them. Am I right or am I right? Also, we use our meetups to develop and implement advocacy efforts that results in improving our streets ultimately, whether that's through improved policies, whether that's through improved procedures or programs. That's what we're here for, to make things better than what they currently are. All right, house rules. So we are on the same page. First and foremost, one person will speak at a time. Obviously, we have this lovely microphone for everyone to hear here. We are also streaming live, so that's also another reason why. Thank you to the tech squad over here for making that happen, because I couldn't do it. Second house rule, we don't do disrespect. So we just ask that people respect everyone's differences of opinion and be considerate of that. The third thing, we follow Vegas rules here. So personal stories and government names stay here, but the lessons and the learnings leave here, and that's what we'll use to really incorporate and apply to improve the things that we want to see get better in our city and our broader region. Next, we will give everyone their time to shine to make sure we hear everyone's voices, thoughts, and feedback. Fifth, we have what's called a parking lot. So I always use him as an example. So when Mr. Stringfellow asks his, really incredible questions, and no one knows what the answer is at that point in time, we'll put it on the parking lot and get the answer, and we'll revisit it next time. And then lastly, but certainly not least, folks do not have to be knowledgeable of local government to be an active participant in our meetups. So, cool. All right. So, our first guest coming up to the front. I know this is like extra, but this is Christie Holland with East West Gateway. She is going to be sharing information about the Gateway to Safer Roadways, St. Louis Regional Safe Streets for All Safety Action Plan. That is a mouthful. Thank you, Christie. Clap it up for her, please. I'm gonna give this to you. I'm gonna pull up.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Hey everyone, thank you for your time today. The purpose of me being here is to really give you an understanding of what's happening at the regional level. At the regional government, we help coordinate all the counties within the MPO. An MPO is a metropolitan planning organization, and we help bring all the counties together in the region. 8 in total right now with East West Gateway. We bring all the counties together to discuss transportation issues. So recently, we came up with this Gateway to Safer Roads plan. It's a safety action plan. Next slide, please. Okay, great. So East West Gateway received some funding for this plan through the first round of Safe Streets and Roads for All grant, or in the planning world, it's known as SS4A. We got this in 2022. And in the first round, in round one, SS4A applicants could apply for funding to develop comprehensive safety action plans or implementation products. But one caveat is that you could not apply or even receive any implementation funding or funding for projects unless you had one of these plans in place. And the plan that was in place had to meet the US DOT their requirements. US DOT is the US Department of Transportation. At the time of applying, only one county already had a plan and one city had a plan. That was Kirkwood and St. Charles County. So East West Gateway just thought it was best that we all come up with this plan together to position all the counties to be able to apply for this funding in the future. So to give you a little bit more details about who East West Gateway is, we are a bi-state MPO, Metropolitan Planning Organization. We have 5 counties in Missouri and 3 in Illinois, and we have just under 200 municipalities. It's a lot of us, y'all. It's a lot, and that explains why it takes some time to get some things done, okay? So keep that in your mind. With so many municipalities in the region, we felt it was appropriate, again, to take the lead and create this regional safety action plan instead of putting everybody in position to apply for their own grant and we all risk not getting the funding to do the work that we need to do. Next slide, please. So we found out that we were awarded funding in January 2023, and we signed all of our agreements in that July. And so we immediately went out to bid. This was a very, very, very quick process. We completed the RFP, the request for proposals process, and selected a consultant, and then kicked off the project immediately in Thanksgiving in 2023. Our deadline was to have the plan completed and approved by the board of directors at the June 2024 meeting, and they gave us roughly 7 months to come up with a plan. So once we got that approval, we was all in, heads down. Next slide, please. Going back to the funding, why we even applied for this in the first place. Roadway crashes are the leading cause for death for ages 8 to 20 years old, and for just young adults, and the second leading cause of death from unintentional injuries in the US. And when we compare the St. Louis region to other regions, our peer regions, and fatal crashes per 100,000 vehicle miles, St. Louis, we always rank one of the highest. We're always above the peer average. And unfortunately, I'm not sure if you can see the graph, unfortunately, we're trending in the wrong direction every single year. It's just getting worse and worse. So it was very critical that we come up with this plan. If you need to hear some numbers, from 2018 to 2022, our region had 9,576 fatal and serious injury crashes. And like I said, it keeps getting worse. Next slide, please. For our action plan, we reviewed the best practices that were happening across the nation. We engaged with some of our local stakeholders throughout multiple groups and task force. We also completed a safety analysis on crash data for the whole region. All of this together makes up a well-rounded safety action plan for the region. We had a consulting group called Equitable Cities, which is a group out of New Jersey, Black-owned, I would like to note. They helped us make sure that equity was woven all the way through the process. That's their specialty, equity first. FHWA's safe system approach is the base that we built this plan around. So if you want to look that up, you can go to highways.dot.gov/safety, or just Google FHWA safe systems approach. But this approach is looking at safer people, vehicles, speeds, roads, and post-crash care. We want to create layers of redundancy so that we have multiple layers of safety. So if you look at this Swiss cheese model down here, it shows how if multiple or a couple layers fail, you still have some other layers that protect people involved in the crash. So for example, you have a driver that's speeding, they fall asleep while they're driving. But if you look at the road design, the road that he's driving on has rumble strips that wakes him up as he's veering off the road. So in this situation, 2 of the safe system layers, they failed, which is him not driving safe, him speeding, him falling asleep. Those failed, but the 3rd layer protected the driver and helped him avoid the crash, the rumble strips. I don't know how many of y'all have fell asleep on the highway by accident and heard that. That's a rumble strip. The safe systems approach is something that we have noticed that our local engineers are trying to figure out. If you know engineers, it's very, very textbook. It's hard to come out of that book sometimes. But the safe system approach teaches you to be much more comprehensive and think about things outside of what that book is talking about. So, we're partnering with all these other agencies outside of transportation to make sure that our region is safer. Next slide, please. So the three main components of our action plans were engagement, safety analysis, and policy review. Next slide. We're going to start with engagement. As I mentioned earlier, there were 5 stakeholder groups that made up of local stakeholders throughout each county, and there was a regional task force. So each of our counties, they're all built different. Not all of them are urban. A lot of them are rural. So some of the issues that the city may be facing is not going to be the same issues that the rural counties are facing, like Jefferson County or Franklin County. And with that said, our consultant CBB suggested that we have separate groups so that we can make sure all issues are addressed and we can all come together and understand what all the issues are. These groups met 3 times. They met to educate them on the processes and best practices that's been used throughout the nation, i.e. the safe systems approach, complete streets. I know we've been talking a lot about complete streets. So even though we're all in transportation, not everyone is familiar with how complete streets work. It's still a very brand new concept. Then we all presented our draft of the high injury networks. We brainstormed some recommendations and we did a draft plan with proposed project locations. These groups helped us get the perspective from local municipalities and counties, as well as local advocacy groups who may have not always had a seat at the transportation table. Having the engagement of the stakeholder groups and regional task force helped us create the momentum that we need to create a full culture change, not just a policy change, but a culture change, and start fostering some ideas behind some of these safety projects. So on this slide, I'm just showing who was a part of the regional task force. This group is a little different than our county stakeholder groups, but we wanted to focus on all 5 elements of the safe system approach. So we have representatives from all different backgrounds, including law enforcement, ambulance services, engineers, planners, local advocacy groups, transit groups, equity focused, and more. And we intend on keeping that same kind of capacity going forward. Now, I do want to note that Transform 314 was one of those groups, but like I said, the process went so fast. Not everyone had a chance to really be fully involved in the process, okay? I'm not sure if Kelly wanted to talk on that later, but I do want to put that out there. It ain't no shade, just let you know this process went very, very fast. Next slide, please. Next up, we're going to talk about the safety analysis. Next. So one of the main components of the plan is the creation of this high injury network, or if you see HIN, that's the high injury network. These are a series of maps that shows us where the most fatal and serious injury crashes are occurring. And we have 5 of those that we include. You got the all modes. So this is all the roads in our region except for the interstates, vulnerable road users, which are elderly, children, even people on the side of the road. Sometimes you see trucks on the side of the road, or you might got a flat, you get out the car, you're a vulnerable road user. And including bicyclists and pedestrians, underserved communities, top contributing factors of crashes and interstate hotspots. We also create a high injury networks for each of our counties, so they'll be able to focus on like what needs to they can direct their attention on what needs to be focused on per county instead of focusing on the whole region. And as you can see on the map, it's kind of blurry. You ain't gonna be able to see that, but we can send the slides out. But if you can see it, most of the high injury network is right at the top of St. Louis and into St. Louis, a little bit into St. Louis County. Yeah, it's mostly just around the urban core. And so some of our more rural counties, they didn't really show up on the injury networks, which is a good thing, that they don't have a lot of fatal and serious injuries, but we wanted to make sure that with this plan, they could still get something out of it. I'm not sure if y'all been through Franklin County before, Jefferson County, but it gets dark. That's not some place you want to be walking. So we want to make sure they have what they need as well. Next slide, please. So this map, again, it's a little hard to see, but this is our regional all modes high injury network. When you get the slides, you'll see some lines that are in red, and these are our top 10% of our fatal and serious injury crashes that are happening in the region. The orange is a top 25%, and the yellow is a top 50%. And you can see that the highest concentration, again, is in North St. Louis, the urban core, the city of St. Louis. We did put this and all the other regional high injury networks on our website. So if you want to take a look at this outside of the presentation, you can just Google East West Gateway high injury network and it'll show up there. Next slide, please. We did dive a little bit deeper into the crash data, and we looked at some systemic treatments that our local roads could deploy on our systems to reduce fatal and serious injury crashes. We identified high-risk roadway characteristics and what countermeasures could be used to lower those risks. We focused a lot on the intersections, like roadway departures, vulnerable road users, and even just speed management. And a lot of those countermeasures that we did suggest, they're already on the FHWA's website. And it's part of their suggested countermeasures, safety countermeasures list. But going back to our county level stakeholders, it was important for us to share this information with each county so that they could understand the issues happening on their specific roadways and why we might suggest specific roadways. Y'all, if y'all hear some of them conversations, it get crazy. But by talking with the stakeholders, we also learned what measures they could use as an agency and what countermeasures they likely can't or won't use. And this really gave us a chance to learn more about challenges that our locals are facing, whether they be political, financial, or even just policy driven. It just put everything into perspective. Next slide, please. The last component of the plan is the policy review. Next slide. We identified 9 policy and programming needs and opportunities for our region. These are listed in no particular order, but they include speeding, seatbelt use, helmet use, distracted driving, impairment, red light running, bike and ped safety, unlicensed drivers, and roadway departures. Yeah, it's a little hard to see, but next slide. To help address those 9 opportunities and needs, we came up with 16 different policies and programming recommendations, and we divided those into 4 more categories. So safe road users, safe vehicles, safe roads, and enforcement. And you can see on the slide, well, you can see all the recommendations here, but once again, it was important for us to discuss all of these with all of our stakeholders because again, they represent all the different facets of things that exist within our region, law enforcement, everything that I am for, engineers, ambulances, everything, equity, all of it. We wanted to make sure that we went through all of this with them because they are going to be the ones who are implementing this. So we need to make sure as we're implementing these policies that they're all on board. Next slide. And this is just the same 16 policies, but in a map so that you can see multiple of these policies actually check off a lot of the boxes in one. Like just one thing could check off a lot of the boxes. Yes, there are some of them that only check off 1 or maybe 2 boxes, but if you go back to that Swiss cheese model, you can't rely on one policy or program to solve all the issues. You have to layer all of these approaches. Next slide. We did want to make sure that we address the great work that is already being done in our region and try to build on those. One thing that we did want to call out is how a few of our municipalities have already been successful in being awarded the SS4A funding. So the city of Kirkwood already had an action plan and they're already currently doing some of the supplemental work now. The city of Webster Groves and East St. Louis are doing some demonstration projects or they're developing their action plan. And one of the projects I'm working on now is with the city of Alton in Illinois. They're applying for the August deadline to do some implementation funding for a demonstration project. Next slide. Now, through all of this work, we did have a pretty lofty goal. The proposed goal was to reduce roadway crash fatalities and serious injuries by 50% by 2050 with a commitment to ultimately eliminating roadway deaths. So I know we talked about Vision Zero in here before. This is essentially Vision Zero without saying Vision Zero because Vision Zero makes some people itch, okay? So reduce roadway fatalities by 50% by 2050. We did decide to set this aggressive and achievable goal, but we got plans. We got some ideas on how we wanted to do that. Next slide. We planned to reach this reduction through addressing the main components I just talked about. So the high injury network, systemic treatments, policy, and programming. Again, the Swiss cheese approach. We got to layer some things to make this happen, this aggressive goal happen. Next slide. So to come up with the 50 by 50 goal, we wanted to make sure that there was real math behind it and that it was truly achievable. So if you look at this chart, you will see the three components of our plan broken out. We are showing that if the region can address 95% of the top 10 and 25% of the region's high injury network, we can reduce 30% of the fatal and serious injuries. So that's step one. Then if we implement 50% of the suggested systemic treatments, we can reduce it again by another 10%. And then finally, if we implement 50% of the suggested policies and programs, then we got another 10% off. So all of this should help us hit 50% by 2050. All right, next slide. This shows us how we can achieve those goals and deadlines we need to meet. One thing that will help us achieve this 50 by 50 goal is that many projects on the 5% list is already programmed, and several counties are already considering planning and programming grant applications as well as implementation. I know a lot of municipalities have applied or are in the process of applying for the August deadline for the SS4A grant now. So people are doing the work. Like I said, the plan has put people in position to really get a lot of these implementation funds. Next slide. So before I close out, I did want to end with some lessons learned or some things that were confirmed during our process. One, keep local stakeholders involved throughout the entire process. Our team feel like they did a pretty good job. Overall, we think we counted presenting to our local committees and boards over 20 times in the 7-month process, but this did not include our stakeholder meetings. One other thing we did was hosted a SS4A how-to workshop for anyone who was interested in the region, and this helped us get the word out about our plan, as well as being another chance to educate the community and the region on what roadway safety is and how we can achieve that. Next, listen. Our stakeholder meetings were really about us presenting data and information and then listening to what they had to say. And this helped us shape our plan to make sure it met the needs of everyone from the rural and urban municipalities. Our team said they believe that this helped us gain the trust of our stakeholders. Because we listened to what they had to say and acted on it, they feel they are just as much owners of this plan as we are. And I have seen that too. Everyone really seems to be on board and really taking this serious and consulting each other within the region and some of our peer regions on like how to do this effectively and sustainably. Understanding that everyone has their own agenda and that we're in charge of finding the common ground. That has been the biggest one. Like I said, it's 8 counties in the region and 200 municipalities, and everybody wants to do their own thing. But having a plan like this puts us all under one umbrella and helps us really work towards the same goal and have the same objectives, ideas, plans to implement these things at the same time or even at different times. And the last thing that we learned was to make your goal realistic and achievable. We started talking about our goal with the stakeholder groups in the first meeting, and what we heard was that they preferred setting an intermediate goal instead of going straight to zero, which again, I told y'all, this vision zero makes some people itch, and I get it. It's very aggressive. It's very aggressive. So having incremental and intermediate goals in the process definitely made everybody much more comfortable and confident that we can achieve safer roads throughout the region. Next slide. That is really it. This slide has the contact information for everyone who worked on this plan. If you do have questions, I can probably answer some. I wasn't directly involved with this plan, but I do help with some of the implementation. of demonstration projects and pilot projects, so I may be able to answer some things. But again, this is very high level. This is the money that the region is positioning each of the municipalities to be able to receive so that we can have more complete streets. We can have safer roads. We're all working together to be outside. You know, we want to be safe outside. Any questions? No problem, no problem. Mm-hmm. It is. The question is whether the high injury network is broken down per county, and if we could see it probably by city as well. Yes, you can. We have it on the East West Gateway website. You could break it down from the regional view all the way down to the county and I think the city level. So you can see exactly where the main problem streets are. Yes.
You mentioned that you had 16 recommendations in 9 areas of policy. With those, are there any sample policies that you all maybe developed?
Yeah, I believe they're in this book. So there's some up there if you want to take it. You could take this one. You can take this. Mhm. And if anybody wants a copy of the plan, it is on the table over there. Take it, please. Yes.
I have a question about the, this is very detailed, like very specific, I should say, because one of the things was sorry, my words right now, the red light cameras,
Mhm.
and I thought those were like kind of unsafe, as having those because like people would try to like break to like clear whatever to like not do it, but is it because we have such a high run the red light that we're like risk, outweighs kind of that? I don't know. I just thought that was like a not.
It is one of the most used best practices. It can be very safe, but it's one of those things that you can't just put that in and expect people to solve all the issues. You have to kind of layer that. You have to reduce the speeds. You have to change the infrastructure that makes speeding less of a thing. You have to kind of build on that Swiss cheese model. And Charles worked on it a lot too. So if Charles wants to talk about it, you could talk about it. No? Okay, cool. Any other questions?
I heard the presentation, it's a beautiful presentation. Now, what can the city of St. Louis expect from this project?
So, of course, they have the countermeasures and ideas of things that they can do as far as implementing safety, but they also have access to a lot of data that they've already been using. Scott will talk about it more with the traffic calming guys. They've already been addressing some of the high injury network. They already had their own reports on that. So, this plan is just positioning them to be able to access some federal dollars to do those projects. Did I cover it, Scott? Okay, cool. Any other questions? All right, we are about to zoom in locally now.
Thank you so much for that. That was a lot of information. Real quick, can you help me with getting the display changed? I have no idea what I'm doing to pull it up on here. Thank you for that, Christie. That was a lot of information. I know, because y'all are kind of looking like, oh man, what was that? Don't worry. I am the follow-up queen. Okay. So as long as you sign in, Kellyanne, see, now y'all got my government name. Kellyanne will be sending these slides, all of the information to you in a follow-up. So make sure you sign in, provide your contact information so you can get the information yourself, see those maps, because I know it's a little funky up here with us. But to kind of get engaged and involved and reach out if you have additional questions. So that was like, again, the super high level, right, overview from a regional perspective, how our region is looking to address issues that we talk about when it comes to our unsafe and our jacked up streets. Now we are going to have a conversation here. with Director Betherny Williams from the Streets Department. So clap it up for her, please. And do you want to? Do you want to sit here? You want to sit in a chair? What do you want to do? Oh, okay, cool. All right.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for this opportunity to come and share with you all today. As you heard, my name is Betherny Williams, and I am here representing some of the hardworking employees of the street, or all of the hardworking employees of the Streets Department. If you know some of them, tell them they're included in the all that I spoke of, because they all do work really, really hard for us in some of our times of shortages. So I want to make sure that I can leave some time for question and answers if you have any, but I want to speak high level to what the Streets Department, what do we do on a daily basis? A lot of people say the Streets Department, you hear the Streets Department's name thrown around pretty much in every conversation. If it's anything that deals with pavement, concrete, anything related, that if they can't find a department to fit it in, the Streets Department takes care of it. So I want to kind of talk about some of the areas that we cover. So first and foremost, you have the director's office, which handles all of your permits. So when you have like block parties, things of that nature, closures, you're moving and you want to block the street in front of your home, those permits come from the Streets Department. As well as any excavation work that you may see. So our utility companies that are working, they work through permit through the Streets Department to do the work that they're doing. In 510, which is the director's office, this department is mainly, it covers and funnels through all of the other divisions of the department. So that's where our inspectors sit, that's where our accountants sit, our payroll clerks, for the entire department that covers those functions, all work out of 510. You also have street maintenance. That's the biggie of them all. So they are responsible for pothole patching. They're responsible for paving when funds become available. They are responsible for our winter operations. They are responsible for just maintaining the roadway. We also have programs like the 50-50 sidewalk program, where we allow residents, they call and report to us, hey, we have tree root damage, or my sidewalk is caving in, or whatever the situation may be. We have a program where they can pay half, the city pays half, and then we go out and fix those sidewalks, those slabs in front of your home that are destroyed of your sidewalk. We also have the sewer lateral program. When you have backup in your basement, the Streets Department, I said, we do it all. What does that have to do with streets? You tell me and I'll tell you back. But so the sewer lateral program, when you have backup in your basement, we administer the program that will go out and investigate as well as bid out the contract work to get that done. Now that does come with a fee that you pay with your water bill to be a part of that program. But the 50-50 sidewalk, that is a program we will come out, evaluate, and send you a letter of what the cost will be. And I'll speak more to some of the actions we've taken with the 50-50 sidewalk program within the last year. We also have streets, traffic, and lighting. So that's all of your pavement markings, your stop signs, all of your roadway signs, all of your lighting, your pedestrian lighting, as well as your signals lighting covers under the Streets Department as well. We also do city tow. Hope you all never have to go there, but we covered city tow as well as your trash service for the city of St. Louis. If you live in a resident where we collect your trash, recycle, and yard waste, that is all covered under the Streets Department as well. And I'll spend some time talking about what we're doing in that division as well. I think I'm going on 3 years now with the department. Every day is something new for me. And so where I thought I would come into this position and hit the ground running with engineering, how can we improve our payments? You know, my drive home, oh, excuse me, at the time I worked in for MoDOT, and my drive home, I'm like, how come when I get off the interstate, my roads turn into this condition? And so when I was given the opportunity to come on board, that was my mindset. That is what Mayor Jones hired me for, was because to look at how can we improve all modes of transportation for all users across the city of St. Louis. Because I want to pause and say, transportation of all motorists is important to Mayor Jones and myself and this administration. And so anything that we can do to move that forward, we're doing everything possible that we can. So I initially had to take a step back and look at the people. We had employees that had not received raises in a very long time. And over the last 2 years, they have seen historical raises, paying employees their value of what they're worth. You know, we work them, they deserve to get paid. So working with the unions to make sure that our employees are paid properly is what I spent almost my first year doing in the department. Now that we have got raises, and now, you know, they stand up a little taller when they walk. Now it's to get into the boots on the ground work. How can I improve the actual functions that we are doing on a daily basis? And so that's when we start looking at ARPA dollars that Scott will talk about some. How could my request became, what can we use some of these dollars to make some improvements that residents will see? We had a laundry list of 50-50 sidewalk requests that dated all the way back to 2017 that had not even been touched. And even in that investigation, we found, I had a group of inspectors that went out to each individual location and to see if it had been done, if it hadn't been done, if it was marked in the system complete and really hadn't been complete. So I was able to ask for ARPA dollars so that we can divide it across all of the wards and spend money in each of the wards just to get that list down. So what you're seeing now, if you see any 50-50 sidewalk work, we are pretty much paying full to get these sidewalk requests done. If we see tree root damage that is really messing up a lot of sidewalks across the city, we are working with forestry, having those trees cut down and removed, and then we're replacing that sidewalk for residents. I have a soft spot for the elderly. So we're really, really, really working hard with our elderly residents to make sure that they can get their sidewalks repaired in their neighborhoods. We're looking more at a holistic approach. How can I, instead of just this 1 or 2 addresses, what if I paid a contractor to come in and do 6 or 7 or 10 addresses in one ward or one area? We cut down on mobbing costs. Every time a contractor would come in to do 1 slab or 2 slabs in front of your resident, I was paying mobilization fee for them to mob in and out of that ward. And so we looked at it. If I give you a contract of 50, what would that look like in cost for us? And so we were able to see cost savings so that we can do more with the funds that we receive from ARPA for that. So that's one of the things. Currently in refuse, what we're doing, getting ready to sign a contract for them to do roll cart. I call it asset management, looking at the assets that we have. I find so many times that I would ask, how many roll carts do we have out? No one knows the answer. I find myself riding up and down alleys just to see what do we have. And then if you look at the census of the city, you look at how people are moving out of the city, do we really need all of those dumpsters? My drivers are they're in tune and practice, roll down the alley. If it's a cart, pick it up. They're not looking at, oh, it's no one at this resident, or, oh, this person is not paying us for trash service. So we're looking at how do we know our assets of what we have and identifies are these the right size dumpsters that we have in the city? How can we put more roll carts out instead of bigger dumpsters? How can we look at the illegal dumping in the city? If I provide this open dumpster, a block that has 15 dumpsters down it and only 3 houses have people in them, they're going to keep coming back because you know why? They know we're going to pick it up every week. So these are the types of things of trying to figure out how do we get around some of those actions that we're seeing. And so we are getting a contract, actually meeting with them next week so that they can get started. One, to just tell me the assets that we have, the dumpsters that we have out, and then how do we replace, make sure what we have, and then is it the best dumpster for the service that we have. When I first started, probably was my worst summer, and I know more now about trash and recycling that I've ever wanted to know in my life. If you want a day in my life, just call me. I'll take you out. We can spend a day together. But no, so, just looking at the number of employees we had, my first summer here, we had literally, currently the city has 45 routes per day that we service, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. When I first started, if I had 20 drivers to show up to work on a daily basis. So what does that mean? If I have 45 routes at the start of the morning and all I have is 20 drivers, we're in trouble. You're going to see trash piling up because we don't have the employees to pick it up. So we've put raises in place where you can get signing bonuses after you stay, after your working test period, that you could come in. We will train you. We've started a program with that Slate, that they have a CDL program. We've created that pipeline where if you go through that program, we will hire you. We will give you the experience. I allowed those individuals to come and ride along with some of these drivers. I'll allow them to spend time in the day in the life of a trash truck driver or a construction worker or whatever the situation may be, so that they can learn and see, hey, I really want to do this. Because we're trying to make people that want this to be their career, not just this is my job for today until somebody make me mad and then I'm moving on to the next spot. So we have to make sure we create those pipelines. And so that's something that we're doing as well. We have signage up everywhere. We've hired a PIO person. Well, he's quit now, but we get a new PIO person. If anybody's interested in that, that's our public information officer. So they do all of our Facebook information that you see. They do our Instagram, our Twitter account. I think we have one for the streets department. Tell the positive story of what we're doing in the city and in the streets department. And so if you like doing those things, hey, apply online. We have a position available for you. You get to go out in the field. I don't bother you that much, just as long as you get the information done. So if you're interested in that, know that that position is open at this time currently. Potholes. I want to talk about pavement. Oh, is that what y'all was waiting on, huh? Want to talk about pavement. I always thought that the streets department, we just not doing what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be paving these streets. We're supposed to be filling these potholes. Why do these potholes keep popping up? What is the problem? I heard someone talk about in a different light, Swiss cheese. We've pothole patched some of these roads so much that it's time for them to be paved. You can only patch something so many times before it's time for an overhaul. Everything has its life expectancy. And that's what we're seeing now. Our pavements have met their life expectancy. And so what we're trying to do is work with alders to figure out how do we get funding to pave these streets. Working with alders to figure out the funding to pave the streets. The streets department, we currently do not have a line item in our budget that speaks to paving of streets. So when I realized that, I looked at ARPA dollars again and said, hey, what if I look at 5 major arterials? What if I just say, what will it take for us to rebuild 5 major arterials at a time, putting us on a cycle that we can say, okay, every year we should plan as a city to pave and do ADA upgrades, sidewalk improvements, curb improvements, signal lighting, signage, striping, all of this at one time. And so that's what we're seeing now with our 5 major arterials. And so Scott will talk more about the ARPA dollars and how we're spending that, but that's a part of it. 5 major arterials at a time. If I was just to say, Mayor Jones, give me funding to pave this whole city. In 10 years, 7, we'll be back in this same space. 15 max, we'll be back in this same space where our roads are where we are in this condition. So we have to prioritize our pavements, doing pavement analysis, knowing the condition of our roads. It's important that you know the conditions of your roads and your bridges. And so we're investing in finding that information so that we can move forward to better together and get paving done for our city. If you have potholes that are continuously popping up, you know, I ask that you put them in CSB. If they're not there, you know, some people, they're like, I put this pothole in CSB 3 months ago. Citizen Service Bureau. And so you can go online and put that pothole in. It doesn't ask for much information, but you have to know the exact location. Every day we have crews that go out. Right now we're in paving season. I was able, and I praise God that some of these alders said, okay, I'll release some funds to do some paving in the wards. So at least one street, it sounds terrible, but at least one street in every ward, you are seeing some type of paving. But what I need everyone to do, make it a priority to your alderman to pave streets, and then I will support them on the back end with the theoretical knowledge of why this street needs to be paved. You make it a priority to your alder to pave these streets, and then I could support that on the back end with the theoretical knowledge of why we should be doing the different paving. We don't have a budget for that. They give me a budget for salt. I have salt domes with salt falling out the back because we haven't had a bad winter. Knock on wood. But that's what we budget for as a city. That and pothole patch material. But we can only pothole patch so much before it's time for paving to happen. So if you leave with nothing else that I've said today, I really want you to really hone in on one thing: making paving a priority to your alderman or alderwoman. When I go out and do these meetings, that's what I want to focus on, because the city has to restructure our budget function, how we budget as a city, if these are the expectations of the citizens. Everybody's commute to work should be a pleasant one. And we want to make sure that we can provide that. But if we don't have the budget for it, it's nothing that we can do to fix that. And our budgets are online. If you don't believe me, you can go out and look the streets department street maintenance budget and look to see what's in there.
Message.
Yes. So know that as well as if you have concerns about potholes, please put them in CSB so that we can get to them as fast as possible. Another thing, people email me all the time about claims. I bust my tire, my whole front end fell off. What can you do for me? Here's my receipt. I want my money in 2 days. I wish I had a cash drawer at the bottom of my desk. But you go through the CSB process with that too, and it goes to our legal department. They will investigate and they will determine if the outcome is to be paid or not to be paid. That's not a decision that myself or the streets department will make. Okay.
Well, thank you. Because those are the questions I had. Thank you. Clap it up for her, please, for that. So I know we got some questions. The young lady over there, her hand shot up first. So we'll go there.
So per the ordinance, it determines how many units in a building if we will even provide the service. So what we're finding is we have a lot of units. We have a lot of buildings that we service that are out of the range of how many apartments should be in the building. But to your question, who determines? It depends on how many people dwell in that building and how many people are paying for that service. And what we're finding is when we came out of the pandemic, when we went into the pandemic, if you called and said, hey, I need a new trash can, I need a new dumpster, I mean, everyone was home. Everyone was cooking. I know I tried every recipe I saw. Yes. So you had a increase in our trash. And so where we would come out and we would just put more cans in the alley, instead of replacing or pulling up the old can and replacing the new can. A couple months ago, last summer, I want to say, we had a backlog of almost 3,000 can replacements across the city. One piece of equipment that I had that was doing this job across the city was broken down. We were able to use emergency contracts to hire someone to come in and help us put these cans out in the alleys. But all they did was replaced what you said. If you said this one, the bottom was rusted out, they will pick that one up and put another one down. But we know that we have too many cans in our alleys for the number of people, one, that are paying for the service and are living in some of these residences. So I will say alleys, it depends on the number of crews we have. That's one thing. So I didn't talk about that piece, and I think that was one of the questions, to talk about how many people. Currently, we have roughly 335 employees across the whole streets department, where you have a TO of almost 500. So that's our org chart, what we're allocated to hire people every year on an annual basis. So I'm roughly 100 plus, almost 150 employees short to do this work. So currently we have one asphalt crew that's doing all of the asphalt work across the city of St. Louis. We were able to purchase an additional paver. So in case, we have a total of 3. You always want one in the hopper in case something happens and you have all these trucks of asphalt that's out on your job site. You have something there to back up if the hopper breaks down or something like that. So it does take time. I just requested a new list. They give me a list every week of the streets that they're currently paving and where they plan to go next. So alleys are a priority, but I really want to get the residentials and the arterials paved as much as I can before we jump into alley paving, because that's a lot of detail work with, garages and things of that nature. So, but if they say it's on the list, we could look. You could email me and I can look at the list to see if it's on the list and let you know what's been paid for and funded. Yes, I think we had a question here.
We're
Then I'll
gonna
come
go
up
over
here.
here and then.
Okay.
You mentioned
A lot of those pedestrian crossing signs we don't have in stock. What I push now when I talk to planning and BPS as they're planning, make sure you think about the maintenance side of all of this beautification that we're doing as a city and all of this that we want. Make sure we're budgeting to maintain what we're putting out there. So I know that I had some push buttons that had been down for like almost a year, that we were able to order that equipment and get it reinstalled. So in some cases we do, if it's like some of our trails, some of our partners, they pay for some of those items to be reinstalled and they maintain it, but then some of them we do. So if you want to email me the location, and then I can see where is it on the list, and we can go from there. Oh, the hand, and then it might just be the bulbs out. So if you email me, then I can have someone go and look at it for sure. Mm-hmm. So we have the budget. So I have budget for people, pothole patch material, salt. Yeah, but paving material, we just can't get people in. Right now, I have a bike ped engineer position on the board. Literally I think they told me 5 people or 8 people applied and 1 person met the minimum requirements. We have engineer positions that are open, that have been open for 2 to 3 years in our traffic division, that will do our signal optimization, that will do our signal timing, will make sure all of those things are up to date. So these are the types of things we're looking at. How do we increase salaries? We're doing it in the city as a whole, is doing a compensation study, looking at, are our salaries compatible? So we're doing what it takes to get the people in the door. We just have to stay focused to get it done. Yes.
So I loved everything that you were saying. Only one thing I had a question about. And that is, if we want to have our sidewalk replaced where the roots have pushed it up, do we have to take the tree down? Can't we keep our trees? And because that's a major thing. I did want to also point out, and I know you guys can't do this, but I wish we had, as a city, the foresight to bring in contractors to do this, because when we pave alleys, first of all, everybody needs to know those are narrow, so you have different equipment.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, they collapse. There's a reason why they get paved, because they're collapsing. When you pave them, that's not going to fix the collapsing portion of it. And the last thing is, it's unsustainable, because you have bricks that have been there 100 years, but if you supported the underside, put the bricks back, you wouldn't have to then pave twice as many places now that you have to now pave every 10 years or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But the tree and sidewalk.
Gotcha. I do hear you when we talk about trying to save some of the trees across the city, but that's a forestry question. I will let them answer that. I'm just here to talk about the sidewalk, and I don't know if they cut some of the roots back. I'm not for sure the process they take. Yeah, so yes. So I'm not for sure of that process. I just know that in a lot of cases, we're seeing where we're having to do almost all the way up to the stairs to residents' home, because the tree roots have grown so much across the yard, and it just, they take over, or they're buckling the street, or they've buckled the curb line, or so many different things that we have to pay attention to as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a couple follow-ups and things I'll be sure to send out to everyone that you had lifted up. Yeah. So I'll send her contact information as well. If folks have, again, I know there are some folks in the audience mentioned some specific concerns. So I'll be sure to share Director Williams' contact information as well. So appreciate that. I learned some stuff too. I don't know if y'all did. I learned a whole heck of a lot of stuff. All right. Lastly, but certainly not least, we have Scott Oglivie in the building that will be sharing information because we've been talking about this ARPA coin. Where's it going? What's happening? Well, he has a whole presentation he's going to talk through to let us know what's going on. So please, Scott, clap it up for him, please.
Thank you, Kelly. You can tell I'm excited about this ARPA funding because I look so optimistic in this photo. We can skip to the next slide. So my name is Scott Oglivie. I work for the City of St. Louis Planning and Urban Design Agency. I primarily work on transportation planning and transportation projects, also some land use things, some long use things related to transit. And Kelly invited me to talk about the transportation projects that the city has funded primarily through the ARPA funding. So the American Recovery Plan Act is a large allocation of federal funding. City of St. Louis got a pretty healthy allocation of that funding, which we're very pleased about, somewhere north of $450 million. These transportation projects account for about 10% of that total funding. So $46 million is what we'll be talking through here. But this does not represent all of the projects the city has right now. We have lots more projects, which I'll touch briefly on at the end. So this project, the umbrella term for this project, City of St. Louis Principal Arterial Traffic Safety Improvements. And so this is basically 6 corridors from west to east. It's Goodfellow, Union, Kings Highway, Grand, South Jefferson, and some streets downtown, Broadway, 4th, and Washington, where especially during the pandemic, we had significant traffic safety and reckless driving activity going on. Additionally, there are improvements at 10 crash hotspots, which are distributed throughout the city. We picked those based on data, and it's a mix of vehicular crash hotspots and pedestrian crash and injury hotspots. You can go to the next slide. So overall, 46 million, which I mentioned, it's a little bit more than 30 miles of streets on these corridors. And this is something we as a city almost never get to do. We never get to go out and repave like a whole street from beginning to end. We were very frequently just doing little bits here and there, 6 blocks here, a half mile over there. So as Betherny mentioned, especially because we rely not exclusively, but primarily on ward capital for funding for repaving. A lot of times that's a ward by ward process. And these arterials cross many wards, and they are also the most expensive streets to make improvements to. It's much cheaper to make improvements to a neighborhood street compared to a major roadway. Common across all these projects, they're all getting fully repaved, so that's the big thing. They're all getting ADA and curb ramp work. When I say ADA work, I mean making the curb ramps at the intersections accessible. Some of these corridors will also get some additional sidewalk work in certain locations. But I will stress that these are not full roadway reconstruction projects. Has anybody driven on Jefferson and Parnell, North Jefferson and Parnell the last? Yes. So we recently just completely rebuilt that roadway. Everything is new. So sidewalks new, lighting is new, traffic signals are new, pavements new, all the stuff is new trees, new landscaping. That's a level above these improvements. So those types of improvements are going to be like $10 million or more per mile. Here we're more in the like $1.5 million per mile range. So we are fixing what's out there to the extent we can with the funding, but we are not completely rebuilding everything. Slide. Oh, and schedule. Everything's under design right now. We're most of the way through the design. We will be wrapping up design on all these corridors in the next few weeks. Most of the work is going to be done in 2025. We also have 2026. We have to expend the funds by the end of 2026. And some has actually started. If you're on North Kings Highway, north of Dr. MLK, you've seen curb replacement, sidewalk work, ramp replacement. That's part of this. And that's kind of the first work that we've been doing with this funding. Slide. So I'm going to run through, again, west to east, all the projects, just give you a little project detail on each corridor. If you're really interested in one of these, stop me as we go. So there's a lot of similarities, but there are all unique corridors. They're each being designed individually. They will share some features, but there are some distinctions between the corridors. So Goodfellow, we're resurfacing that from Delamar to Hollis Ferry Circle. Parking lane bump outs. So I'll say that a bunch, so I'll just explain what that is now. You know what a parking lane is? On-street parking. It's about 8 feet wide. Put a car there. When that lane is not occupied by a vehicle, what happens a lot of the time? Insane. Exactly. Somebody uses it to drive, to pass on the right side, to speed. And so a lot of these projects will be filling in certain of those spots with little bump outs to make that driving behavior less appealing. Excuse me. Especially near intersections. So near intersections, you want to keep cars away from the intersection for visibility, both for drivers. Charles is signaling. Oh, maybe. Okay, bring me up an emergency water just in case. Thank you. You want to be able to see around the intersection, so that's a big safety feature, both for drivers and vehicles, and especially for pedestrians. Drivers need to be able to see pedestrians. Pedestrians need to be able to see drivers. So we'll be kind of clearing out the parking from those corners, which is a safety enhancement. That'll be a common theme throughout. So we've touched on that now. All these projects will get what we call high visibility crosswalk markings. So those are the larger white blocks. We're building them all out of more durable materials, what we call a thermoplastic material. So it's not paint. So you paint a crosswalk and the paint is usually gone a year, 18 months later, it just wears off. The thermoplastic is a plastic sheet that is melted into the asphalt, and that'll last as long as the asphalt. It's also usually more visible at night. So those are common improvements. Do people know what a road diet is? Road diet is a lane reduction generally. So the common one is you got 4 lanes, 2 in each direction. You go to 3 lanes, 1 in each direction with a center turning lane. That is a dramatically safer roadway cross section. All the data supports that. So on this project, north of Natural Bridge, oh, I see my wife is here to get our daughter. She'll find. Thank you again, Charles. Playing sidekick role. Thanks, Charles. Road diet, Natural Bridge up to I-70. And then north of I-70, Goodfellow gets a little wider. Right now, it's a 3-lane section with bike lanes. We had a prior traffic study there, and we're doing some additional safety improvements in that segment, which I think in particular has some speeding issues because the street is wider there. So that'll include things like center medians in some places in that center turning lane so people don't pass in the center turning lane. And some other improvements, especially near Hollis Ferry Circle. It's 2 lanes in and out of the circle right now. It really should just be 1 lane in, 1 lane out. So we'll make those improvements. Almost wrapped up design. We haven't had a public open house on this one yet, but we will in the next couple of weeks, not yet scheduled. We'll email Kelly when we schedule it. Slide. Ooh, these are a little hard to see. So one feature I didn't mention actually, you guys know the really wide segment of Goodfellow that it's south of I-70 and it's north of Natural Bridge. It's like super wide. It's the widest street in the city of St. Louis. Is this ringing it? The Federal Center is on, yeah. You couldn't do it. It's impossible. You probably could. It's like 100 feet wide, which is, it's much wider than it needs to be. So that segment is also getting, it's tough because if we were going to rebuild that, we would rebuild a totally different street. But when we're kind of working with the existing curbs, we want to shrink the street to the extent we can. And so there we're going to do what we call parking protected bike lane. So that's an image of Union, but we're going to do something similar where we move the parking away from the curb. We're going to build some concrete medians, and the bike lanes will be against the curb. Is there a lot of biking on that section of Goodfellow now? There's not, but we're trying to do something to eat up some of the roadway space to make the driving safer and to make it safer for anybody just using that corridor. If you're walking, the sidewalk is small, you might be right next to vehicles. So this moves the vehicle away from the pedestrian. And if you're riding a scooter or something, you happen to be pushing a baby stroller, maybe you just do it in the bike lane because it's smoother, it'll be freshly resurfaced rather than the sidewalk. Slide. Union. Union is probably the lowest volume and narrowest of these roads overall. So it's getting resurfacing, Delmar up to West Florissant, parking lane bump outs again, high visibility crosswalks. Right now, the bike lanes on Union go from the park up to just north of, actually they go to Page. So we're gonna extend them from Page to Natural Bridge with this project. And it gets curb ramps and ADA improvements at all the intersections. And we have the open house for this one scheduled for next Thursday if you want to see it in more detail. I can tell you where it is. Hold on. It is. Yes, Williams Temple Church of God in Christ, 1500 Union Boulevard, 63113. You'll be there. All right. See you next Thursday. Slide. So that's an image of a lot of those parking lane bump outs we'll be doing. That one's, I think that one's on Arsenal in Benton Park, but they'll look a lot like that. In some cases, if they're at an intersection, we like to put the stop sign on them because it makes the stop sign more visible. But they'll also be kind of mid-block, just taking up space in some locations. And then most of the bike lanes will be conventional bike lanes in this stretch because we don't have room for parking protected bike lanes. Slide. Kings Highway. The next two are the big ones, Kings Highway and Grand. Kings Highway and Grand vary a lot through the corridors. They're long corridors, 9 miles each. And so we're doing different things in different parts of these corridors that are context specific to the amount of traffic and to the adjacent land use on these corridors. So the whole thing's getting resurfaced. The whole corridor will be ADA accessible. And that's actually, well, all the intersections at least, that's a big deal. If you're riding a bus, if you're using a wheelchair or other mobility device, there are lots of places where you encounter a lot of difficulties in St. Louis, just using the sidewalk or navigating an intersection. So really happy to see the whole corridor end to end be ADA compliant. At the south end, we're doing a road diet, adding some bike lanes where the traffic volume is much lower. A big part of this project, well, I'm out of order. Okay, two big parts. One big part, and this is something Christie was talking about. We had a real safety issue from Lindell up to Dr. MLK, so that segment is getting more funding so we can do more improvements in that segment. There'll be a road diet, there'll be a center median, and there'll be a variety of traffic calming features, hopefully to get vehicle speeds down. Also, on Kings Highway from Lindell to Dr. MLK, and there'll be like extra improvements both at the Lindell and Kings Highway intersection and at the Delmar and Kings Highway intersection, which is like way bigger and wider than it needs to be. And both those streets are pretty like busy bus routes. There's a lot of pedestrians crossing there and the crossings are super wide. So improvements of both of those. We're kind of realigning some stuff at West Pine and Lindell along the northeast corner of Forest Park. A big part of this project was access to Tower Grove Park. So we've heard over the years a lot of concerns about accessing Tower Grove Park across Kings Highway. And so this is a tricky part because traffic volume is pretty high on that part of Kings Highway. But we're adding a center median, which will make it safer to cross the street. We're actually adding probably a traffic signal, an additional traffic signal kind of between Arsenal and Magnolia, like a pedestrian actuated signal, so people can cross fewer lanes of traffic with the median and access the park there. And then north of MLK up to I-70, this part's already under construction. Right now it's 3 lanes on each side of the median. We're going to take that down to 2 lanes. The curb lane will be a parking lane instead of a driving lane. And then we're doing a lot of crossing safety things. So if you've seen it, we're building like crosswalks through those medians. Right now, if you're crossing Kings Highway, you're kind of like going around the median. The sidewalk will go straight through the median, which is safer. And so you're not exposed to vehicles. And that's already getting built. Slide. Okay, those are hard to see, but on the right is, you can see that median adjacent to Tower Grove Park, some modifications to the entrance. We'll go to the next slide. And here you can see some of the stuff already under construction, North Kings Highway. Next up is Grand. So one of the super exciting things about Grand, and this is a Christie thing too, North Grand is really high on the list on the high injury network for fatalities and serious injuries. So we were resurfacing Grand, but we get a bonus on North Grand because Great Rivers Greenway, in cooperation with the city, both the city and GRG are funding this project, are building the Brickline Greenway on North Grand. Thank you, Craig. It's a super cool project. So next year we'll be repaving all of Grand, but the brick line will also be under construction at the same time. And that's a full rebuild project. So everything, the whole right of way will be taken from the very, insufficient state of that road now to as nice as you can make a street, I would say. So it'll be safer. It'll look tons better. There'll be a multi-use facility, bikes, runners, just public space for people. And that is also just one of the most unsafe stretches of road. So it should become just much safer for everybody using it. So that's a huge highlight. Then north of there, this project is going to allow us to build parking protected bike lanes to kind of extend the connectivity along the east side of Fairground Park, and then continuing north to like the Hyde Park Water Tower, then kind of Hall Street. You can actually, anybody been on the Riverfront Trail, you can access it from Grand and Hall Street right there. So it'll kind of link all the way north to the Riverfront Trail. And then on the, through the mid part, not as much is changing. It's by the highways. There's not as much we can do there. And then as we get south, like south of South Grand, we'll do a bike lane extension from Utah down to Chippewa. So I think adding like 3/4 of a mile of bike lane south of the business district. And then as we go further south, it's 3 lanes right now, but we're going to add some medians in that center turning lane because we get a lot of dangerous driving behavior there. And we've got Jersey barriers in the middle lane right now, which are making it safer, but don't look good. So we'll make those permanent medians. And I think those are the highlights. Next slide. I think we're hopefully going to do some cool bus stop markings on this project. Grand, as you guys know, probably highest ridership bus route, best service, not as good as it used to be, but hopefully coming back to more frequent service. And so we want to highlight where those bus stops are and make sure drivers don't park in it and block the bus stop. So hopefully we'll do some cool bus stop markings through this corridor. Slide. And this is a slide of Brickline Greenway. We could do, maybe you have done, I don't know, you might have done a whole session on this project. They would love to they'd love to come talk to you about it. But just super cool. You can picture North Grand in your mind right now and here. So just kind of run through. So new landscaping, new trees, sidewalk, kind of a planting strip that'll be between the sidewalk and the multi-use trail. The multi-use trail it'll look a lot like the segment that's right by the MLS stadium on Market Street right now. Same kind of brick line of brick detail down the middle. More landscaping, these kind of big landscaped bump outs at the corners, road diet, so it'll be 3 lanes, and like much safer to cross Grand, and we'll definitely have a traffic calming effect. We would love to be able to do this type of project everywhere. We can't do it everywhere because this is like $25 million a mile, and we've got 1,300 miles of street in the city. So 25 million a mile. Yep, that's what it takes to go from 0 to hero in your streets. But I think this is the best work we can do, and we can also, you take maybe elements of this type of project and put it into other projects, even if you can't do the full thing. Slide. And then South Jefferson, sorry, Craig. This is the most boring one, because South Jefferson is also, Craig lives near there. South Jefferson is also the line for the future Metrolink Green Line expansion. So we didn't want to kind of go too far on this project because it's kind of an interim resurfacing, because the city is working very hard towards accessing federal funding to try to build Metrolink Green Line. That'd be a great session too, Kelly. And so just resurfacing and some safety improvements on South Jefferson. Slide. One thing I will point out, we've got a bad intersection, Gravois and Jefferson. So there will be some safety improvements there. There's some like dead space that's a like center turning lane. That's not a turning lane, so we're going to fill it in with medians, make the crossings safer, and hopefully we'll have a safety project on Gravois just east of here also. Slide. Oh, I forgot downtown. Okay, downtown, 4th Broadway and Washington. 4th and Broadway is at Paris Streets. 4th goes north. Broadway goes south out of downtown. So we're going to add a cycle track on 4th Street. So that's a 2-way bike facility. So there'll be one less vehicular lane. This will be protected by a concrete median. So take you in and out of downtown from the south. And then Broadway, the next street over, we'll get a road diet just with a lot of bump outs. It's just very wide. There's not, traffic volume is down since the pandemic. And these streets just don't need to, like rush hour peaks are just not what they used to be. So they're too wide, and then especially at night, you get people driving crazy. So we're gonna try to slow them down a little bit. And then Washington, there's also periodically, I think it's a lot better than it was a few years ago, but some reckless driving behavior. So Washington's getting some updates, and we're doing a raised intersection at Washington and whatever the front of the, I think it's 8th, the front of the convention center. So you got a lot of pedestrian activity there. Convention center worries a lot about pedestrian safety there. So we'll raise the intersection up. So the whole intersection is like a speed hump. So hopefully slows vehicles down, just makes it a prominent location that drivers hopefully respect, and doing some other safety improvements there too. So those are our $45 million of ARPA-funded street improvements. Next slide. Oh, you can kind of see the cycle track there. Next slide. Oh, the hotspots. We're also doing these spot improvements throughout the city. I mentioned we picked these based on high vehicular crash or pedestrian crash locations. These are basically just intersections where we either did or did not have a corridor project and thought needed help anyway. So some of them are on the corridors, and it means we get to just put a little more money into those locations. Some of them are off the corridors, but we'll do some spot improvements there. Slide. So this is kind of a sidebar I got 3 minutes. We put up a really nice map recently of all the city's major transportation projects. We still, I think, struggle to communicate what we are doing, but we have a much higher level of investment in projects right now than we did 5 or 6 or 7 years ago. We want to tell the story about those projects. Also, just let people know they're happening because we fund them, and then a lot of the time it takes several years to actually build them. So if you scan that QR code or go to that very long URL on the bottom, you can see a description of kind of all these project types, the kind of stuff we're doing, and an interactive map that has all of the major projects. These are not ward capital projects. These are big projects across the city. It'll give links to websites with more information, hopefully a project year or year to get built. And we intend to just keep this updated so we can communicate better with residents across the city where we're making investments. Slide. And then I've got a couple slides about some of the stuff on that table. So the city also, funded by ARPA, is doing a citywide transportation mobility plan. It's very exciting for me because I work in planning. Does anybody know, does the city have a transportation? No, we don't. Very unusual for a city not to have a transportation plan in 2024 or 2014 or 2004. So we're finally, yeah, we're finally going to get one. We haven't really done this since like the 60s when we were building highways, and like the transportation paradigm is different. So the big thing, this is not so much about projects, right? We've been talking about projects. This isn't really about projects. This is about what do we want to do with our transportation system? What are the values? What's our vision for it? What are the goals? What are the things we care about? When I say value, it's like, do we care about roadway capacity more? Do we care about safety more? Do we care about, building new things more? Or do we care about maintaining the stuff we have more? So this is a chance to talk to residents all throughout the city and just get like on these basic things, what are people's priorities? We're doing that right now. There's a statistically valid survey that we're like doing right now, and then we're going to put that up online so you all can take it once we get enough initial responses. We've got 4 open houses coming up, which are on the next slide. Nope, they're on the next slide, but we'll stay here. But just some highlights. So values, vision, goals. But we've been doing like a lot of interviews with city staff at the beginning of this process, so they know about it and they can give us input into it. We're working on a policy and ordinance review. There's lots of policies and ordinances that touch on transportation or transportation funding in some way. So we're working through those. We're working through a street design guide that forms just kind of a baseline of what different types of streets in the city, what the ideal version of those streets looks like. We're building off of the safety action plan. We're taking all of that data, and I'll say we are already using that data that Christie was talking about. We're already kind of getting our first project from that teed up, which I can't talk about in detail yet, but it's great data. That project's really good. We're going to build a little more into it in terms of what the city can do to respond to it. So that'll go into this TMP, Transportation Mobility Plan. We had our first community advisory meeting, Mr. Stringfellow. There he is. Yes, he's on the committee. And we're really in the like gathering input phase right now from the public, and then we'll get into like later in the fall and winter into kind of really plan development and writing the plan. But now is when there's something you care about. You can go online and tell us right now, TMP website, take that survey that's coming up. I'll go to the open houses. Now we'll go to the next slide. So we got 4 open houses. We've got paper over there. They're on the website. This is just, chance to come through, talk to the project team about your goals and hopes and dreams for transportation in St. Louis. And we hope you come. First one is 21st, I think. We've got like a Central West, we got like a Forest Park one, a downtown one, a north one, and a south one. Everybody you can come to all 4 if you want. But they're coming up late September, early October. And I think that's it. Is that yes, okay. Thank you guys. Yes. Yeah. Well, partially yes. So, I mean, to be honest, so when the city, you're talking about NGA when you say, yeah. So when the city, and it was like a big team effort to keep that in the city. The city made some commitments to make some infrastructure improvements. And so Jefferson, now we've finished Jefferson, we made a commitment. Cass, we're going to be rebuilding 20th Street as well as kind of a parallel bike corridor, and Jefferson is kind of the vehicular corridor. And then GRG eventually is going to rebuild St. Louis Avenue from like roughly Grand to like Florissant. So around NGA, there is going to be a lot of investments. I would say, and all those locations needed investment anyway, but that the NGA project really did bump it up as a bigger priority. I would say every place deserves trees, but the way we prioritize yeah, right. Who deserves the nice stuff? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there's not. Yeah. We don't have a perfect system right now. Or in some cases, any system. And part of that is because we don't have a citywide transportation plan, right? So the TMP is supposed to kind of inform like, how do we make decisions? And then also this safety action plan that East West Gateway just did, the data is really good, and it I think will become like one of the key inputs into where does the city need to make investments to make improvements to these areas that have really poor safety records. So I've been working through this, and it's chaotic. It has been chaotic, but I feel like we're on the trajectory to be able to make like much more informed decisions and ensure equitable investment and like fix the worst stuff first. I feel like we are going in that direction. And the other thing is we just have so many more projects than we had a few years ago that we are touching already on a lot of these high injury locations. So, but it's a great, I mean, come tell the city at the TMP, you need to figure out like a standard kind of way to prioritize things. Yeah. You got a question?
I did. Apologies, I came in late. You may have covered this. This is more of an inquiry. The planters, I don't know if that's the correct term. There are several planters in several neighborhoods, Hamilton Heights, College Hill, Academy Park. Some of them are used to slow traffic down and kind of slow some of the residential streets down, but they're all in decay.
Yeah.
None of them are being maintained. I'm kind of partnered with certain older people. I didn't know if it was their duty, but is that a part of the transportation?
So that kind of like landscaping stuff is something the city really cannot maintain on our own. And so we really rely on residents or neighborhood associations or some third party to do that stuff. We just, streets director Williams was here before, and she mentioned just like how short-staffed they are in general for the essentials. And so, what the city can really do is like cut grass in parks and trim trees. They just really cannot do other enhanced landscaping. So if they're there, if you're working on it, thank you. We appreciate that. But I think that's the path to do it is kind of resident action will take care of those.
Not to take too much time up, but I'm asking, is there some kind of pilot program? A lot of all the people are not even aware of it when I speak to them. So
Yeah.
I don't know if there's resources already in the ward to maintain some of those things. I've asked Operation Brightside. I've spoken to several different organizations, but there is no concerted effort.
Correct.
To
Yeah.
maintain these spaces because they serve multiple. They fill with trash. Sometimes they're stopping accidents, and I just think it's a pivotal marker that should be addressed at some point. I'm just asking to just kind of pilot program for the residents that are interested to get some kind of funding to do that.
I wish I could say yes, but I can't. Yeah. Yes.
I went to the open house at Roadways when they were talking about like Kings Highway and like the certain changes and how like certain areas are getting, a lot of them getting road died because, like you said, drop in population and stuff like that. Is there any thoughts around like what if this like certain areas come back? Like, so could these be like not reversed easily, but like I guess like redesigned with that in mind?
Yeah, so a lot of them could be reversed. So some of them are really striping, and you can change that, every time you resurface the road. And then a lot of those bump outs, I mean, they're infrastructure, but they are infrastructure that could be removed if you had to remove it. It's not like moving the whole curb or changing the drainage. I will say that, so most of the time we do a road diet, like we have traffic volumes, and there's usually like a real margin where it's comfortable that you can take the lane count down. And the crazy thing is like a roadway that has one lane in each direction with a center turning lane will carry about 95% as much traffic as a roadway with 2 lanes in each direction, just because the turning is so much more efficient. And so it's usually fine. The city we've reversed one road diet we've done, and we've done a bunch. We reversed one on Van de Venner that was really close to Highway 44, and it didn't really work after it went in, and they did reverse it. But otherwise, I think we find that there is often a little, I think it's changing, but there's often a little hesitancy from people that are like, is it going to be a problem? But usually we get positive feedback actually afterwards. Like, oh, I was a little worried, but it does feel safer. And so usually the feedback is yeah. Okay.
When you were talking about the medians,
Yes.
you were talking about suicide rates, right? We call them suicide
Yeah.
rates, where you go in the middle.
I call them a center turning lane.
But here's the issue. You talked about this earlier. Is that when there's traffic on where people park?
Yeah.
That's where people drive through, or they drive. They start their turn like a block away.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's what I was saying. The planters.
Yeah.
Come into place.
Right. So what we're doing. So a lot of times when we have that center turning lane, we're adding medians into that space, so you can only turn at appropriate spaces, and you can't just drive through it. Yeah, and actually, like, so on Goodfellow, the north section of Goodfellow has a bunch of those planters in the parking lane. As part of one of these projects, those will be removed, and just like a lower island will be put there that serves the same purpose of making sure people don't drive there, but it won't accumulate trash and all that stuff. So, yeah. Okay. You bet. Thank you, Kelly. Much appreciated.
Thank you. I learned a lot, as always. Appreciate that. I'll be sure to follow up with folks again with the slides, the link to where folks can stay updated about all of the stuff that's going on, including the upcoming town or open houses and all of that good stuff. So thank you again, Scott. To be continued. All right, real quick, because I know it's 8. A couple updates. We've been talking a whole lot about Complete streets. I know. Complete streets policy. So if y'all didn't know, the updated version of the complete streets policy was signed by Mayor Jones. I don't know when that was. In late July, maybe, I think. And so this is obviously a picture showing her signing it. And that's, oh, sorry. I know. Right, famous people. Next up, also, I know we talked about this. I think this might have been at our last meetup about some proposed recommendations of the Charter Commission that were sent to the Board of Aldermen. So there were a few of the recommendations that were sent for the Board of Aldermen's consideration before final passage. Not all of them were passed out, but the three that were, first, I know we talked about the creation of the Department of Transportation in the city of St. Louis. So the Board of Aldermen did pass that. We also have what passed, expanding the authority of the Board of Aldermen to increase the coin, the budgets. That passed the Board of Aldermen, and also modernizing the language of the charter, including changing the name of the Board of Aldermen to the City Council. So there are a couple other things. I know we briefly had talked about creating an Office of Public Advocate and then also election reform. Those items, I mean, they could still be revisited, I'm sure, at some point or whatever, but it's looking like if the mayor signs these bills, we will be considering them on the November ballot. So just kind of want to let people to know that information, because I know we've been talking about it. All right, call to action real quick to a close, because we got to do stuff. There's a lot of information presented. And so this is these are always my calls to folks. So before our next meetup, which is later next month, I'm just asking y'all to do at least 2 of these activities, okay? So first, share one thing you learned tonight with somebody that you actually like and that you have a close relationship with. One thing. We talked about a lot of stuff, and like I said, I'll follow up with the slides and all that. Make sure you share that with someone. And if you share it on social media, please tag Transform 314 and let us know that you learned something here, because that informs us to make sure we're putting on programming that is value added. Also, yes, also, we ask, please engage with one of the efforts discussed tonight. There are a plethora of town halls, open houses, et cetera, et cetera. Make sure you get involved in something that really speaks to you, that you really found interesting, and let us know about it. And lastly, but certainly not least, always an option. If you are really interested in something, maybe what Director Williams said really stirred a spirit in your soul about making sure they get their coins to that department, feel free to share that with your older person. Some of these other conversations we're having about the planners, about whatever else that we talked about. If you're really interested and you want to know, what are your alders' thoughts on it? What are they doing? How are they working with the city departments to bring that through? Have that conversation with them. And if you don't know who your older person is, holler at me and I will help you find out so you can get in contact with them. I'm also asking folks to invite at least one person to our next meetup. And our next meetup is kind of funky because your girl's schedule is a little bit all over the place. So our next meetup is going to be September 25th, same time, same place. So make sure you come out. And that is all that I have for this. I know we a little overtime. Apologies, but most people still stayed. So not bad. I appreciate you all for coming out. Make sure you sign in. Thank you if you have not done so we can keep you guys up to date. And again, follow up with all this helpful information for you to act on. So that is all I have for you this evening. Thank you again for coming out, and we'll be in touch. Stay safe, folks.